Hi guys, my name is Nikita. So in this video I'm going to try to explain the basics of MVC. Now I'm not going to go into too much depths because I want it to be beginner friendly and I also want to be short. So MVC stands for Model View Controller and it's software architectural design pattern. Now I'm explaining this from a web development point of view. It works a little different for other types of web frameworks and in other web development. And I'm not going to debate with this true or not, but I'm going to be explaining things from a web development perspective. Alright, so MVC is definitely one of the most frequently used design patterns. Most of the popular web frameworks use at least some parts of MVC, and the general purpose or goal is to separate functionality. Not just functionality, but logic and the interface, all kind of things in an application. So this promotes organized programming and it allows multiple developers to work on the same projects with this. And this is somewhat true for all design patterns, but especially with MVC. So before we take a look at the different components that make up MVC, let's take a look at some popular frameworks that use MVC concepts. Now notice, I said MVC concepts. The reason for that is because MVC can mean different things to different people, and frameworks can kind of borrow some of the concepts and still be considered MVC. And a good example of that would be something like Ruby on Rails or PHP Igniter. These frameworks actually have folders in their file structure, called our folder structure, called the models, view, and the controllers. And then something like Django for Python just borrows certain concepts, but doesn't actually have that strict folder structure. And then another thing that can happen is one framework will put one aspect of the application in the controller, and then another one would put it in the model. So I think that's why MVC is so confusing, because there are not just one way to do it. There are actually many ways to do it. Alright, so we are going now get into three components of MVC, which is model, view, and controller, as I said it before, guys. So first we have the model, which is responsible for getting and manipulating the data. So it's basically the brain of the application, and usually it interacts with some kinds of database. This could be a relational database like MySQL or NoSQL database. I guess it's something like MongoDB, yes. It really doesn't matter, and in many frameworks that support multiplied database, the model code will stay the exact same, okay. It's just the database driver that needs to change. And it doesn't even have to be a database that works with it. It could be just a simple file. Okay, so you could just have your model interact with a JSON file and pull data from that. Alright, so it takes care of queries like select, insert, update, delete. The model also communicates with the controller. In most cases, the controller can request data through the model, and in most cases, the controller updates the view. But with some frameworks, the model can actually update it directly, and then updates the view. Another example of what makes MVC complicated, so just realize there are different implementations and they can act differently from framework to framework. Alright, so next we have the view, and you can probably guess what that takes care of that. That's the actual view of the application. So it's the user interface, it's what the user sees when they interact with the application. So the view also actually consists of HTML and CSS code, along with the dynamic values and from the controller. So the controller does communicates with the view as well as model. Now, depending on which framework you use, the template engine may vary. And the template engine is what allows with dynamic values and dynamic data if you have straight HTML. We can't output variables, we can't use logic, select and if statement. So with the template engines, we can do that stuff right in the view or right in the template. So some examples of the template engines would be handlebar dusts. They are based on JavaScript and there are a lot amount of them out of there. And some do more than others. Some are better, some use maybe some specific technologies, but you have a lot to choose from, especially with JavaScript. Alright, so finally we have the controller, and the controller takes in user input. So this could be from user visiting a page or clicking a link, which makes a request, or submitting from makes a post request. And we also have delete requests, but requests for updating, and this can't be made directly from the browser to browser. You can only do a get or a post, but we do have HTTP clients that are at times built in with the frameworks that can do that. Now the controller acts as kind of middleman between the model and the view. The controller will ask the model to get some data from a database, and then the controller will take the data and load a view. Nice, and pass that into data, and then from the template engine takes over and it can basically do some logic, do some output for variables and things like that. Alright, and the controller can also load a view without passing it data, so just a plain web page with HTML and CSS, no actional templating logic. Okay. So here's a very simple example or diagram. Now we have the user, which sees the view of the application in the browser, and it can make some kind of request with input to what called a router. Okay, and the request could be some kind of link that can clicked or some kind of route, and then the router will call a specific controller method based on that route. And if data is needed, if you need to fetch some data, the controller will then interact with model, which interact with database, and then once the controller gets the data back, it can then load a view and it can send the data to the view and it will get dealt by the template engine. Okay, and then once that's all done, it's sent view back to the browser and for the user to see. Okay guys, I guess this was hopefully a video for you. I wish you good luck in your futures. Thank you for watching this video. Bye bye, see you.